Hello everyone, it's Emma here, and I just have to share something with you. I had such a sweet start to my day today, and it's all thanks to a furry little friend. I was walking to the coffee shop this morning, just my usual routine, lost in thought and enjoying the crisp autumn air. The leaves were crunching under my feet, and the sun was just beginning to peek through the buildings. And then, oh my goodness, I saw the cutest puppy. Honestly, it felt like magic. He was this tiny ball of fluff, with big, bright eyes and the waggiest tail I've ever seen. He was just sitting there on the sidewalk with his owner, looking so content and peaceful. It completely melted my heart. That little puppy just radiated such a calming, soothing energy, it totally shifted my mood. You will not believe how much that tiny creature brightened my whole day. It was such a simple moment, but sometimes those are the most powerful, aren't they? So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together. And remember, new videos are released daily focusing on English, speaking and listening skills to help you improve and enjoy your learning journey. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you just need a day to yourself? A day where you can just wander and explore, and maybe learn a thing or two without any pressure. Well, last Tuesday, I decided to have one of those days. I'd been meaning to visit the local history museum for ages. It's kind of tucked away in this beautiful old building downtown, the one with the ivy crawling up the side. And I finally decided to go. It was a crisp autumn day, the kind where the air has that bite to it but the sun's still warm on your skin. Perfect museum weather, if you ask me. I remember pulling my favorite scarf a little tighter around my neck. It's that soft, chunky knit one, the color of burnt caramel, and taking a deep breath as I walked up the steps. The heavy wooden doors creaked open, and I was hit with this wave of hushed reverence. It smelled like old books and polished wood, a scent that always takes me right back to my grandma's attic. The entry hall was magnificent. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting these jewel-toned patterns on the worn, tiled floor. And there, right in the middle, was a grand staircase sweeping up to the second floor. I mean, seriously grand. I felt a little like a character in a period drama just standing there. I got my ticket from this lovely older woman with a smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She even gave me a little pamphlet, which I promptly folded and stuffed in my pocket, thinking, yeah, I'll look at that later. You know how it is. I started with the exhibit on the town's early settlers. Honestly, I thought it might be a bit dry, dates and names and dusty artifacts. But, oh my goodness, I was so wrong. They had these amazing dioramas, tiny, perfectly detailed scenes of everyday life. There was one of a bustling market square, with miniature horses and carts and people in these intricate little costumes. I spent ages just peering into it, imagining the sounds and smells of the market, the bartering, the laughter. There was also a display case filled with old letters and diaries. I'm a sucker for handwritten stuff, aren't you? I love the idea of holding something written by someone long ago, getting a glimpse into their thoughts and feelings. One letter, written by a young woman to her brother during the war, completely captivated me. It was so full of hope and worry and love. I actually felt a lump forming in my throat as I read it. It really puts things into perspective, All our little worries and stresses. They just seem to melt away when you connect with something so real and human from the past. Then, guess what happened? I stumbled upon this hidden little room tucked away behind the main exhibit. It was dedicated to the town's musical history, and it was like stepping into a different world. Old instruments lined the walls, violins with chipped varnish, a grand piano with yellowed keys, a banjo with a missing string. It was strangely quiet in there, but I could almost hear the music echoing in the silence. I even tried to play a few chords on the piano. It was terribly out of tune, but it made me smile. I imagined someone, maybe a young girl with pigtails, practicing scales on that very piano 100 years ago. I spent so much time in that little room I almost missed the next exhibit, the one on local folklore and legends. Now, this is where things got interesting. You see, my town has this really weird legend about a giant frog. I know, it sounds ridiculous. I always thought it was just a silly story told to kids. But the museum had this whole section dedicated to it, with old newspaper clippings and eyewitness accounts. There was even a sketch of the supposed frog, looking rather menacing, I must say. I started to wonder if there might be something more to the story. After that, I needed a break. I found a quiet corner in the museum's cafe and ordered a cup of tea and a slice of lemon cake. It was deliciously tart, just the way I like it. As I sat there, sipping my tea and looking out the window at the falling leaves, I realized how much I was enjoying this solo adventure. Sometimes, it's so good to just disconnect from everything and everyone and just be refreshed and recharged. I headed upstairs. The second floor was dedicated to art, mostly local artists, landscapes and portraits. I'm not a huge art connoisseur, to be honest, but I appreciate the skill and creativity. There was one painting in particular that caught my eye. It was a simple scene, a woman sitting by a window, reading a book. But the light in the painting was just magical. It was as if the artist had captured the very essence of a quiet, peaceful moment. I stood there for a long time, just soaking it all in. And then, you won't believe this, but I accidentally bumped into something. I mean, really bumped into it. It was a small sculpture, perched precariously on a pedestal. I gasped, convinced I'd knocked it over. But somehow, miraculously, it stayed put. My heart was pounding. I looked around nervously, hoping no one had seen my clumsy moment. Luckily, the gallery was almost empty. I quickly moved on, feeling slightly flustered. It's moments like those that remind you you're human, right? The last exhibit I visited was on the town's more recent history, the 20th and 21st centuries. There was a display on the impact of technology, with old computers and telephones and even a rotary dial phone. I picked it up, feeling the weight of it in my hand, and remembered my grandparents' house, the sound of that phone ringing in the hallway. It's funny how objects can trigger such vivid memories. As I was leaving the museum, I stopped by the gift shop. I'm not usually one for souvenirs, but I found this lovely little postcard with a picture of the stained glass window from the entrance hall. It was just so pretty, I couldn't resist. I also bought a small book of local ghost stories, because, well, the giant frog legend had piqued my interest, hadn't it? Walking out into the crisp autumn air, I felt different. Lighter, somehow. Like I'd been on a little journey, not just through the town's history, but also through my own memories and emotions. The day had started with a simple desire to explore, and it had ended with a sense of connection, a feeling of being grounded in a place and a time. It's amazing, isn't it? How much you can discover in your own backyard. I mean, this museum had been right there all along, and I'd just never taken the time to really explore it. It made me realize how important it is to slow down sometimes, to appreciate the small things, the stories and the history that surround us. So, yeah, it was just a visit to a local museum, but it was so much more than that. You know what I mean? Okay. So, picture this. It's a Saturday. Sun streaming through the kitchen window, dust motes dancing in the golden light, you know, that kind of perfect, lazy weekend morning. I'm sipping my coffee, scrolling through Instagram, and bam. I see it. A video of someone making homemade mozzarella. It looked so effortless. Like magic, almost. Stretchy, gooey, milky white perfection. And me? I'm instantly captivated. I've always had this fascination, I guess, with making things from scratch. Bread, jam, pickles, you name it. I like knowing where my food comes from, the process, the transformation. And cheese? Cheese seemed like the ultimate culinary challenge. So, right then and there, still in my pajamas, I decide. Today, I conquer cheese. Now, I'm not exactly known for my patience, right? I'm more of a wing it and see what happens kind of cook. But cheesemaking, as I was about to discover, is precise. There's chemistry involved, temperatures, pH levels, cultures, it's a whole science. Which, of course, I completely underestimated. First, the recipe hunt. Down the internet rabbit hole I went, comparing different methods, reading forums, watching videos. So many variations. Finally, I settled on a relatively simple mozzarella recipe, one that promised foolproof results. Famous last words, right? Next came the ingredient gathering. Luckily, I had most of the stuff already: milk, lemon juice, salt. But the rennet, that was a new one. Had to make a special trip to the health food store for that. The lady behind the counter gave me this knowing look, like, "Oh honey, you sweet summer child. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into." I should have taken that as a warning. Back home, kitchen transformed into a makeshift cheese lab. Pots steaming, thermometers perched precariously, a strange anticipation hanging in the air. I felt like a mad scientist, about to unleash some dairy-based creation upon the world. The first step was heating the milk. Easy enough, right? Wrong. The recipe called for a specific temperature, something like 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Not 89, not 91, but precisely 90. I hovered over the pot, stirring constantly, my eyes glued to the thermometer, like it held the secrets of the universe. It was agonizingly slow. And then, just when I thought I'd nailed it, the temperature would suddenly spike, or plummet, sending me into a mini panic. Seriously, I was sweating over a pot of milk. You can imagine. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the milk hit the magic number. Time for the rennet. Now, this stuff is powerful. Just a few drops, and it's supposed to transform the milk into, well, something cheese-like. I added the drops, stirred gently, and then waited. And waited. And waited some more. Nothing. The milk just sat there, innocently swirling, as if oblivious to the cheese destiny I had planned for it. Doubt started to creep in. Did I do something wrong? Was my rennet faulty? Was the universe conspiring against my cheese-making dreams? I reread the recipe, checking every detail, every measurement. Everything seemed right. And then, just as I was about to give up, I saw it. A subtle shift in the texture of the milk. It was starting to thicken, ever so slightly. A tiny curdle here, a small clump there. Hope surged. It was working. The next step was cutting the curds. The recipe instructed me to use a long knife, making gentle slices in a grid pattern. I, however, in my cheese-induced excitement, wielded my knife with a little too much enthusiasm. Instead of neat, uniform curds, I ended up with a milky, clumpy mess. It looked less like mozzarella and more like, well, I'm not sure what it looked like. Definitely not cheese. But I persevered. I gently stirred the curds, heating them further, according to the instructions. Slowly, miraculously, they began to separate from the whey, forming larger, more defined clumps. It was starting to resemble something, cheese-adjacent, at least. Then came the fun part, stretching the curds. I drained the whey, leaving behind a mass of warm, squeaky cheese. The recipe said to pour hot water over the curds, then fold and stretch them until they became smooth and elastic. Sounds easy, right? Again, wrong. The curds were hot, sticky, and stubbornly resistant to my attempts at stretching. I ended up with cheese strings all over my hands, the counter, even my hair. It was a cheesy disaster zone. But, you know what? I didn't give up. I kept at it, stretching and folding, until finally, miraculously, the curds started to come together. They became smoother, shinier, more cheese-like. I shaped the warm mass into a ball, dropped it into a bowl of ice water, and there it was. My mozzarella. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the smooth, perfectly round ball of mozzarella I'd envisioned. It was a little lumpy, a little misshapen, and definitely not as Instagram-worthy as the video that had inspired this whole adventure. But it was mine. I had made it from scratch. And you know what? It tasted amazing. Fresh, creamy, with a delicate milky flavor. All that effort, all that frustration, it was all worth it. So, I sat there, in my still pajama-clad glory, amidst the cheesy carnage of my kitchen, eating my slightly wonky, homemade mozzarella. And I thought, you know, this is what it's all about. The process, the mistakes, the little victories. The joy of creating something with your own hands, even if it's not perfect. It's about the journey, not just the destination, right? And let me tell you, that slightly imperfect, slightly messy mozzarella? It was the best cheese I'd ever tasted. Because it was a testament to my perseverance, my stubborn refusal to give up, even when faced with a mountain of curds and a kitchen covered in cheese strings. It was a reminder that sometimes, the most rewarding things are the ones that challenge us, that push us outside our comfort zones, that make us question our sanity while standing over a pot of slowly heating milk. So, yeah, that was the day I tried making homemade cheese. A day filled with sticky fingers, near disasters, and a whole lot of cheese. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Because, let's be honest, who can resist the allure of homemade mozzarella? And maybe, just maybe, next time, I'll even manage to keep the cheese strings out of my hair. Maybe. Hey everyone. Learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But guess what? Your effort today is your strength tomorrow. Think about it. Every word you learn, every conversation you attempt, it all adds up. It builds this incredible foundation that makes you stronger and more confident each day. It's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. You've got this. And you know what? There's a fun little trick you can try to boost your speaking skills. Pretend you're anchoring a show. Imagine you're in your kitchen, cooking dinner, and you're describing each step like a TV chef. Or maybe you're on a walk, and you're reporting on the beautiful scenery around you. It might feel silly at first, but trust me, it's a super easy way to get comfortable speaking out loud, and it's surprisingly effective. Describing a place you visited can be another fantastic exercise. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? I totally get it. It's like having all these beautiful pictures in your head, but struggling to find the right words to paint them for others. Describing a place, even if just to yourself, helps you weave those words together and build your storytelling confidence. It could be your favorite cafe, a park you love, or even your own living room. You will not believe what happened next. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the host had this amazing Australian accent. Honestly, it felt like magic. The way they spoke, the intonation, everything. It got me thinking about accents and how they impact our understanding. And you know what? I'd love to hear from you. Which accent do you find easiest in English? I'm always curious to learn what resonates with other learners. Let me know in the comments below. I can't wait to read your responses. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you get this urge to create something? Like, not just doodle on a napkin, but really make something? That's what hit me a few months ago. Out of the blue, I had this sudden, overwhelming desire to make a clay pot. A real, honest-to-goodness, hand-built clay pot. I'd never done anything like it before. I mean, sure, I'd played with Play-Doh as a kid, who hasn't? But this was different. This was earthy, primal, almost. So, there I was, Googling pottery classes near me. And wouldn't you know it, there was this cute little studio just a bike ride away. Serendipity, right? I signed up for a beginner's workshop, feeling a mix of excitement and, if I'm honest, a touch of trepidation. What if I was terrible at it? What if my pot ended up looking like well, you know, a lumpy blob? The day of the workshop finally arrived. I remember cycling over, the sun warm on my face, the air smelling of freshly cut grass. The studio was tucked away in this charming little alleyway, with colorful planters overflowing with flowers. It smelled faintly of damp earth and something woodsy. Kiln smoke, probably. It was instantly calming. Inside, the studio was a whirlwind of activity. Wheels were whirring, clay was being slapped and shaped, and there was this low hum of conversation. It felt alive. My instructor, a woman with kind eyes and hands that looked like they were sculpted from clay themselves, welcomed me with a warm smile. Her name was Sarah, and she had this calming aura about her. You know those people who just radiate peace? That was her. We started with a lump of clay, this beautiful, dark brown, speckled clay. It felt cool and slightly damp to the touch, and oh, that earthy smell. It was intoxicating. Sarah showed us how to wedge the clay, which, let me tell you, is harder than it looks. It's like kneading dough, but much denser, more resistant. The idea is to get all the air bubbles out. Apparently, air bubbles are the enemy of pottery. They can cause your pot to explode in the kiln. Explode. Can you imagine? So there I was, grunting and groaning, wrestling with this lump of clay, feeling like I was in a losing battle. My arms were aching, my clay was, well, it still looked like a lumpy blob. Sarah, bless her heart, patiently guided me, showing me the proper technique. Slowly, gradually, the clay started to yield. It became smoother, more pliable, more obedient. It felt like a small victory. Next came the actual pot making. We were learning the coil method. Basically, you roll out long, snake-like coils of clay and then stack them on top of each other, smoothing them together to build the walls of the pot. Sounds simple enough, right? Wrong. My first few coils were, let's just say they weren't exactly uniform. Some were thick, some were thin, some were, well, let's not talk about those. My pot looked less like a pot and more like a wobbly stack of clay worms. I was starting to feel a bit discouraged. But Sarah, ever the patient instructor, reassured me. It's all part of the process, she said, her voice gentle. Don't be afraid to experiment. Embrace the imperfections. And you know what? She was right. It was the imperfections that gave the pot character. It was the wobbles, the bumps, the little fingerprints that made it unique. It was mine. So I kept going. Slowly, painstakingly, coil by coil, my pot started to take shape. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but it was starting to look like a pot. I was actually doing it. The feeling was exhilarating. As I worked, I found myself getting lost in the rhythm of it all. The repetitive motion of rolling the coils, the gentle pressure of smoothing them together, the quiet concentration. It was meditative, almost. The world outside the studio faded away. It was just me, the clay, and the quiet hum of the wheels. Once the basic shape was done, it was time to add the finishing touches. I decided to give my pot a simple, rounded rim. I used my fingers to gently pinch and shape the clay, creating a soft, organic curve. Then, using a wooden tool, I carved a small, spiral design around the base. Just a little something extra. And then, it was done. My pot. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't symmetrical, it wasn't even particularly round, but it was mine. And I loved it. It was imperfect, yes, but it was perfectly imperfect. It held the imprint of my hands, the story of my struggle, the joy of creation. Leaving the studio that day, my arms ached, my clothes were covered in clay dust, but my heart was full. I felt a sense of accomplishment, a sense of connection to something ancient, something primal. The pot had to dry for a few weeks before it could be fired in the kiln. Waiting was torture. I kept checking in with Sarah, eager to know when the big day would be. Finally, the call came. Firing day. I rushed back to the studio, bubbling with anticipation. Seeing my pot emerge from the kiln, transformed by the fire, was magical. The clay had hardened, the color had deepened to a rich, warm brown, and the spiral design I had carved stood out in beautiful relief. It was perfect. In its own, perfectly imperfect way. Now, that pot sits on my windowsill, filled with a small succulent. Every time I look at it, I remember that day in the studio. I remember the feel of the cool clay in my hands, the smell of the earth, the quiet hum of the wheels. I remember the struggle, the frustration, the joy of creation. And I smile. You know, it's funny, isn't it? How something as simple as making a clay pot can teach you so much. It taught me patience, it taught me perseverance, it taught me to embrace the imperfections. But most importantly, it reminded me of the simple joy of creating something with my own two hands. And that, my friend, is a feeling like no other. So, are you thinking of trying pottery? You should, you really should. It's messy, it's challenging, but it's so worth it. You might surprise yourself. You never know, you might even discover a hidden talent. Or at the very least, you'll have a good story to tell. And a wonky, but beautiful, pot to show for it. Just like me. Okay. So, grab a cup of something warm, tea, coffee, hot cocoa, whatever floats your boat. Because this story is a bit of a ride. It's about the best surprise gift I ever received, but it's not as straightforward as it sounds. It's not a diamond necklace or a fancy car, you know. It's something much more potent. It's about family, about realizing things you were too blind to see, and about the strange, unexpected ways life has of shaking you up. So, picture this. It's my 25th birthday. I'm living in this tiny, shoebox apartment in the city, working a job I tolerated, not loved. But hey, rent's gotta get paid, right? I wasn't expecting much for my birthday. My family lived miles away, and while we were close in spirit, life had scattered us like dandelion seeds in the wind. We'd chat on the phone, sure, but visits were sparse. They weren't big on grand gestures or fancy parties. Practicality was their love language. Which, don't get me wrong, I appreciated, but sometimes a girl just wants a little sparkle. The day started like any other. I woke up, the faint smell of city smog mingling with the slightly burnt toast I'd managed to produce. Cooking wasn't, and still isn't, my forte. I checked my messages. A couple of happy birthday texts, a funny e-card from a friend. Nothing earth-shattering. I trudged to work, the usual gray cubicle landscape greeting me. It was a Monday, after all. Mondays are rarely a party. Then, just before lunch, a delivery guy shows up. Huge bouquet of sunflowers, bursting with sunshine. Sunflowers are my absolute favorite. I was beaming. I mean, who doesn't love a surprise bouquet? The card was simply signed, "Thinking of you." No name. Now, I had a few admirers. Nothing serious, but this felt different. More personal. The flowers were so vibrant, so full of life. It was like they were singing a little happy song. The scent filled my cubicle, this sweet, earthy aroma that instantly brightened my day. You know how a smell can just transport you? It took me right back to my grandma's garden, buzzing with bees and bursting with color. The rest of the day was a blur of speculation. Who sent the flowers? Was it Mark from accounting? Or maybe that cute barista I'd been chatting with? My imagination went wild. That evening, I got a call from my mom. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," she chirped. "Your dad and I have a surprise for you. We're coming to visit." Now, this was a real surprise. They hadn't visited me in the city in over 2 years. I was ecstatic, bewildered, and a tiny bit panicked. My apartment was, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly company ready. I spent the next 2 hours in a frenzy, tidying, vacuuming, hiding laundry under the bed. Don't judge me. We all did it. They arrived late that night, their faces etched with the fatigue of a long drive. But the moment I opened the door, my mom enveloped me in a hug so tight I could practically hear her heart beating. My dad, a man of few words, just smiled and ruffled my hair, like I was still a little girl. "Happy birthday, kiddo," he said, his voice gruff but warm. And then, he handed me a small, worn wooden box. It was plain, unassuming. No fancy wrapping, no ribbons. Just a simple box. I looked at them, puzzled. "What's this?" I asked. My mom grinned. "It's your surprise," she said. "From Grandma Rose." My grandmother Rose. She had passed away a few years earlier. My heart clenched. Grandma Rose was, well, she was magic. She had this twinkle in her eye, this infectious laugh, and a garden that was basically Eden. She was the one who taught me to love sunflowers. I carefully opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a key. A single, antique-looking key, attached to a small, tarnished silver tag. The tag was engraved with a single word: Rosewood. Rosewood? I whispered, my mind racing. I knew the name. It was a small town a few hours away, a place Grandma Rose used to talk about. A place she called her sanctuary. My parents exchanged a look, a mix of sadness and something else. "Hope, maybe? Your grandma left you something, sweetheart," my dad said softly. "A small cottage, just outside Rosewood. It's been in the family for generations, but she wanted you to have it." I was speechless. A cottage? Mine? It felt like a dream. But it also felt heavy. Like a responsibility. I'd never owned anything so significant in my life. The next morning, we drove to Rosewood. The town was small, charming, with quaint little shops and friendly faces. It felt like stepping back in time. The cottage was nestled on the outskirts of town, surrounded by overgrown trees and a sprawling, neglected garden. It was small, a little dilapidated, but, oh, it had character. It had soul. The air smelled of pine needles and damp earth. Sunlight streamed through the dusty windows, illuminating the worn wooden floors and the faded floral wallpaper. As I explored the cottage, I started uncovering little treasures. Grandma Rose's gardening tools, her favorite armchair by the fireplace, her collection of vintage cookbooks. And then, tucked away in a drawer, I found a stack of letters. Letters from my grandma, addressed to me. Letters she'd written over the years, filled with stories, advice, and so much love. I sat on the floor, surrounded by these pieces of her, and I just wept. You see, I hadn't realized how much I missed her, how much I'd needed her. I'd been so caught up in my own little world, my own struggles, that I hadn't fully processed her loss. This cottage, this unexpected gift, wasn't just a building. It was a connection to her, a tangible piece of her love. Over the next few months, I poured my heart and soul into renovating the cottage. I ripped out the old wallpaper, repainted the walls, and brought the garden back to life. It was hard work, but it was healing. With every nail I hammered, every flower I planted, I felt closer to Grandma Rose. And guess what? The town embraced me. I made friends, found a job I actually enjoyed, and discovered a sense of community I'd never known before. Rosewood became my home. This unexpected gift, this little cottage, had completely transformed my life. It wasn't just a surprise, it was a lifeline. It was a second chance. It was a reminder that even in loss, there can be incredible beauty, unexpected joy, and enduring love. And it taught me that sometimes, the greatest gifts aren't the shiny, expensive ones. They're the ones that nourish your soul, the ones that connect you to something bigger than yourself, the ones that remind you who you really are. So, yeah, that's my story. The story of the surprise gift that changed everything. It wasn't what I expected, but it was exactly what I needed. You know what I mean? Hey everyone, learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But guess what? Success comes to those who practice when no one's watching. Think about it. Those quiet moments, those seemingly small efforts you make when you're all by yourself. That's where the real magic happens. It's like building a secret superpower, and trust me, it builds incredible confidence. You are absolutely rocking it, even if no one sees it yet. You know what can be really helpful? Giving imaginary directions. Imagine you're guiding a friend through your city, or explaining how to get to your favorite cafe. You can do this while you're cooking dinner, walking the dog, or even just waiting for the bus. It's such a fun and easy way to practice speaking without any pressure. Honestly, it feels like magic when you start doing this regularly. Participating in online discussions, like the comments section here, can also be incredibly helpful. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? It's completely normal. Online discussions are a safe space to practice expressing your thoughts and connect with other learners. It's all about taking small steps and celebrating every little win. And you know what? I was just thinking about all the amazing English speakers out there, and it made me wonder, which English speaker inspires you? It could be an actor, a singer, a public speaker, or even someone you know personally. Their fluency, their confidence, their unique way with words. What resonates with you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. A long sigh escapes, followed by the clinking of ice in a glass. So, you wouldn't believe the day I had. Honestly, it all started with lemonade. Sounds innocent enough, right? Well, let me tell you, sometimes the simplest things, they just unravel. See, my in-laws were coming over. My wonderful, slightly critical in-laws. Now, I love them, I really do. But they have this uncanny ability to notice every single dust bunny, every slightly off-kilter picture frame, every imperfection. You know the type? So naturally, I wanted everything to be perfect. And what's more refreshing, more summery, more perfect than homemade lemonade? It's like the quintessential symbol of hospitality, isn't it? I had this vision, this idyllic scene in my head. Everyone gathered on the patio, sunlight dappling through the leaves, laughter ringing out, and me, the gracious hostess, pouring glasses of ice-cold, perfectly tart lemonade. The reality was different. It started early that morning. I woke up with this strange sense of foreboding, like a tiny rain cloud hovering just over my head. Ignored it, of course. Poured myself a cup of coffee, strong enough to kickstart a small engine, and headed to the grocery store. Lemons, sugar, those cute little paper straws, the works. The store was chaotic. Sticky floors, screaming children, a rogue shopping cart with a wobbly wheel that kept veering dangerously close to my ankles. It was sensory overload. I just wanted my lemons and to escape. But, of course, they were out of the regular lemons. Only those giant, mutant-sized ones remained. They looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie, honestly. What was I supposed to do? Juggle them? But I needed lemons, so, mutant lemons it was. Back home, the kitchen looked like a tiny lemon-themed war zone. Rinds everywhere, juice splattering on the countertops, sticky lemon sugar concoctions clinging to my fingers like, well, you can imagine. And the juicer. Don't even get me started on the juicer. This ancient contraption, inherited from my grandmother, decided to stage a mini revolt. It kept jamming, squirting lemon juice in all directions except into the bowl. I swear, it was mocking me. At one point, I looked in the mirror. My hair was a mess, I had lemon pulp smeared across my cheek, and I looked defeated. This lemonade, this symbol of perfect hospitality, was turning into a symbol of my impending doom. You know what I mean, that feeling when everything is just slightly off? But I persevered. I wrestled with the mutant lemons, coaxed the ancient juicer into submission, and finally, I had a picture of what looked like lemonade. It was a slightly unsettling shade of yellow, maybe a bit too cloudy, but it smelled lemony. That was something, right? Then came the sugar. Now, I'm usually pretty good at baking, you know? I can whip up a mean batch of cookies, no problem. But for some reason, on this particular day, my sugar measuring skills decided to take a vacation. I poured, I stirred, I tasted, too tart. More sugar. Stir. Taste, still too tart. More sugar. By the time I realized what I'd done, the lemonade was, well, it was basically liquid sugar. It was so sweet, it could have given a hummingbird a sugar rush. Panic set in. My in-laws were due to arrive in an hour. My perfect lemonade was a sugary disaster. My kitchen was a sticky wasteland. And I was a lemon-covered mess. I wanted to curl up in a ball and just disappear. Then, I heard the doorbell. Early. Of course. I took a deep breath, plastered a smile on my face, and opened the door. There they were, my in-laws, looking all bright and cheerful and expectant. We thought we'd surprise you. My mother-in-law chirped, holding a large, beautifully wrapped basket. We brought some fresh peaches from our neighbor's tree. Peaches. Fresh, juicy peaches. Suddenly, an idea sparked. A crazy, impulsive, slightly desperate idea. Come in, come in. I ushered them onto the patio, my mind racing. I grabbed the pitcher of sugary lemonade, the basket of peaches, and a blender. I'm just whipping up a little something special, I said, trying to sound nonchalant, like this was all part of the plan. I dumped the lemonade, the peaches, and a handful of ice into the blender. The noise was deafening, a whirring, grinding cacophony that seemed to echo the chaos in my head. And then, silence. I poured the mixture into glasses, garnished them with a few mint leaves I'd miraculously managed to keep alive, and presented them to my in-laws. Peach lemonade, I announced, with a flourish. They took a sip. Silence. Another sip. And then, a smile. This is delicious. My mother-in-law exclaimed. So refreshing. What a wonderful surprise. My father-in-law, a man of few words, simply nodded in agreement, a small smile playing on his lips. And in that moment, the tension that had been knotting my stomach all day melted away. The chaotic morning, the mutant lemons, the rebellious juicer, the sugar overload, it all faded into the background. The sun was shining, the laughter was, finally, ringing out, and I, the slightly frazzled but ultimately triumphant hostess, was pouring glasses of, well, not quite lemonade, but something even better. It wasn't the picture-perfect scene I'd envisioned. It was messy, it was improvised, it was real. And somehow, it was even more perfect because of it. Because sometimes, the best things in life, the most memorable moments, they come from embracing the chaos, the imperfections, the unexpected twists and turns. You know what I mean? They come from turning a lemon, or a mutant lemon, and a whole lot of sugar, into something beautiful, something shared, something peachy. And isn't that what truly matters? The connection, the laughter, the shared experience, even the slightly sticky fingers. It's the imperfect moments that make life, well, life. Right? A warm smile spreads across her face as she takes another sip of her drink, the ice clinking softly. So yeah, that was my lemonade day. A day I won't soon forget. Okay. So, you know how sometimes you just crave something? Like a deep, primal craving that won't let you rest until you've satisfied it? Well, last week, it was bread upma for me. Bread upma. It's not fancy, I know, but it's comfort food, you see? Pure comfort. And I was in dire need of comforting. It had been one of those days. You know the kind, right? Where everything that could go wrong did. Anyway, this craving hit me like a ton of bricks. Suddenly, all I could think about was the soft, pillowy bits of bread, sautéed with mustard seeds that pop like tiny firecrackers, the tangy zip of curry leaves, and the comforting warmth of the whole dish. My mouth was watering just thinking about it. So, I decided, right then and there, I was making bread upma. Now, the thing is, I hadn't made bread upma in ages. My grandmother, bless her soul, used to make the best bread upma. It was legendary in our family. Hers had this perfect balance of textures, soft yet slightly crispy, and a flavor that was both familiar and exciting. I, on the other hand, had a history of, let's just say, mixed results, with bread upma. Sometimes it turned out okay, other times, well, let's not go there. It was usually either too mushy, too dry, or bland as cardboard. But, hey, I was feeling brave, almost recklessly optimistic. I told myself, today's the day. Today, I conquer the bread upma. So, I marched into the kitchen, feeling like a warrior going into battle, armed with a wooden spoon and a determined glint in my eye. First, I rummaged through the fridge. Found some slightly stale bread. Perfect. Bread upma is meant for stale bread. It gives it that lovely, slightly chewy texture. I ripped the bread into bite-sized pieces, trying to channel my grandmother's spirit. She always ripped the bread, never cut it. Said it made a difference. Who am I to argue with bread upma wisdom passed down through generations? Next came the chopping. Onions, finely diced. Tomatoes, chopped into slightly larger chunks. Green chilies, slit lengthwise. I'm not a huge fan of spicy food, so I used just one chili. But, you know, you can adjust the spice level according to your bravery. Or, you know, your masochistic tendencies. Wink. Then, I assembled my spices. Mustard seeds, of course. The cornerstone of any South Indian dish, really. Curry leaves, fresh and fragrant. A pinch of turmeric for that gorgeous golden hue. Some red chili powder for a touch of heat. And a generous pinch of salt. Because, well, salt is life, isn't it? Now, here comes the crucial part. The tempering. This, my friends, is where the magic happens. Or, in my case, where things could potentially go horribly wrong. I heated some oil in a pan, watching it shimmer and dance. Then, with a deep breath, I added the mustard seeds. Pop, pop, pop. They sizzled and spluttered, filling the kitchen with their earthy aroma. Success. I hadn't burned them. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Next went in the curry leaves, releasing their fragrant citrusy scent. Followed by the chopped onions, which sizzled and softened, becoming translucent and sweet. I stirred them around with my trusty wooden spoon, feeling a surprising sense of competence. Maybe, I thought, maybe I've finally cracked the code to the perfect bread upma. Once the onions were softened, I added the green chilies and tomatoes. The tomatoes softened and released their juices, creating a vibrant, bubbling mixture in the pan. I stirred in the turmeric and chili powder, the spices blooming in the heat and releasing their warm, earthy fragrances. My kitchen was starting to smell like my grandmother's kitchen, and I felt a pang of nostalgia. Then, the moment of truth. Adding the bread. I tipped the torn bread pieces into the pan, trying to distribute them evenly. This is the tricky bit. Too much stirring and you end up with mush. Too little and you get dry, unevenly cooked pieces. It's a delicate dance, a culinary ballet of sorts. I gently folded the bread into the spice mixture, trying to coat each piece without breaking them up too much. The bread started to soak up the vibrant colors and flavors of the spices, transforming from plain white to a beautiful golden yellow. It smelled divine. I couldn't resist sneaking a taste. Good. Really good. But something was missing. Aha! Coriander. My grandmother always added freshly chopped coriander at the end. It added a bright, fresh note that balanced out the richness of the dish. Luckily, I had some in the fridge. I chopped a generous handful and sprinkled it over the upma. And there it was. My bread upma. Golden, fragrant, and inviting. It wasn't exactly like my grandmother's, but it was pretty darn close. And, you know what? It was perfect. Perfectly imperfect, just like me. I served myself a generous portion, the warmth of the dish spreading through me like a comforting hug. I sat down at the kitchen table, relishing the silence, the aroma of the upma filling the air. As I ate, I thought about my grandmother, about all the times she'd made this dish for me. It was more than just food, it was a connection to the past, a reminder of love and family. So, what started as a simple craving for comfort food turned into something much more. It was a journey of rediscovery, a small triumph over my culinary insecurities, and a poignant reminder of the power of food to connect us to our memories and loved ones. And honestly, it was the best bread upma I'd ever made. Not just because it tasted good, but because it was mine. You know what I mean? It was a testament to my perseverance, my willingness to try, and my ability to find joy in the simple things. Even in the midst of a chaotic day, I had managed to create something beautiful, something comforting, something that nourished not just my body, but my soul. And sometimes, that's all you really need, isn't it? a warm bowl of bread upma and a quiet moment to yourself. It's the little things, right? They're the ones that really matter. Now, tell me, what's your go-to comfort food? I'm always looking for new ideas. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for watching and spending this time with me. I really appreciate you staying connected and joining me on this journey. If you'd like to keep up with our daily English speaking and listening practice, I'd love for you to follow, like, subscribe, and share these videos. You know, before we go, it made me wonder, who are you hoping to catch up with this weekend? It's always so lovely to hear what everyone is thinking about, and sharing your plans is a wonderful way to practice expressing yourself in English and connect with others in the comments. I'm so excited to hear your thoughts. See you tomorrow, and in the meantime, take good care and keep practicing.